Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining in the webinars and thank you so much for being early. I'm Sarah here from Blue and Maddie's here as well, joining us.
Hey, thanks for making it. We'll probably wait a couple of minutes for a few more people to join. Normally in the first 5 minutes, a few more people get on board, and then we'll get started. Yeah, so essentially, I think today is more of a general overview and a little bit on how we use Blue. And I think that there's two core experiences. One, how I've used Blue for my agency to grow that from just running by myself as a freelancer to then growing that to a whole team and turning it into a real company. And then also how we use it at Blue to build Blue. And yeah, really trying to dig into like the first principles on general project setups and how to think through that so you can always get it right. And then discussions on client projects and also when to have one project or multiple projects. And so I think hopefully that'll be quite interesting. And I think from next week we'll then go back to more specific use cases as well. So yeah. If it's your first time here on a webinar, do drop a comment. Let us know, what you use Blue for and where you are in the world. That's always it's always interesting to know.
I think we can wait a couple of minutes to let everyone join in. Southern California. That's cool.
Okay, cool. Two people from Southern California. So that must be pretty early over there, right? Something like 8 or 9 a.m. Hey, folks. Okay, Munich and Mexico City. Wow, that's quite a commute.
8 a.m. Wow, that's so early.
All right, yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. Hoping you're having your morning coffee already. Okay, another person at 8 a.m. as well, Sergio. Got it.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I mean, okay, we're actually we're trying out this super peer tool, which is quite nice and easy to use, but I think sometimes the connections are not great through it. So we're going to see how it goes for the next 1 or 2 webinars, and then if not, we might then switch to Zoom or something else. Yeah. Cool, Nate. I see. Okay, so you're figuring out how to use Blue for Wi-Fi deployment projects. Great. Nate, just a heads up. We also have free onboarding as well, which Sarah runs. So you can also look through our super peer page as well. I'll drop the link in the chat. Cool. So if you do want some one-to-one time to actually get set up, you can go on that page and book a free support call. Yeah, no worries. Cool. I think we'll give it maybe 1 more minute there, and then
yep.
get started.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, and then Sarah is dialing in from Cambodia, so it's 11 p.m. there.
11 p.m. at night. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm in Colombia, so that's EST time zone, 11 a.m. So not too bad for me.
It's like a nice afternoon there.
All right, I think we get started then. If people join a little bit later, then they can catch the recording as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So just briefly for those who are new, we'll kind of do a quick introduction of ourselves, I guess. So my name's Manny. I'm the CEO, and I founded Blue. It's coming up to 4 years ago, and I had the idea even before then. And I actually I run multiple companies. I've got an agency where we design digital products, and Blue came out of the idea of trying to manage those projects. So we built our own tool for that, and then it kind of grew from there. So I do have quite a bit of experience in terms of client side projects as well, even to this day. And so Blue is specifically built for those kind of use cases, and then a lot of companies use it for many different things. Sarah, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah, customer success of Blue. I started last year, so coming up it's like 1 year-ish at Blue. So normally if you email to Blue support and all of that, normally I will be the one that answers the support. And if you also want to book a demo with us, I'll also run the demo for you as well.
Cool. So yeah, and just a heads up, as we're going through some of the things today, feel free to drop questions in the chat, and if they're relevant to what we're talking about at that very moment, we'll answer them right away.
Yeah.
And if they're slightly on a tangent, then we'll revisit them at the end, and then we'll clear all the questions as well. All right. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions at any time. Cool. So just to go through a little bit what we're going to be talking about today. So the first bit, I want to talk about the way I think of general project setup and how to think through, if you've got a specific kind of process, wherever it's customer support or it's projects, and how to think through building a project so you get it, pretty much right the first time, and then as you use it, you can then customize it, right? And what are the tools that enable you to do that? And then specifically, also talk a little bit about client projects and how to handle that if you've got clients that you want to invite into Blue. And then also the discussion of when, do you need one project, these multiple projects, right? And when it's the right time to maybe split a project into two. And then finally, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the advantages of using Blue for everything organization instead of just a few things, because it gives you a lot more focus. Cool. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Sarah, if you can enable that, perfect. And let me know if you guys can see that. Sarah, can you see it on your side as well?
Yeah, I can see the full screen now.
Cool, awesome. So yeah, so what I'm you guys right now is the actual project that we use to build Blue. So this is where we work from. While this is obviously specifically for development, the ideas behind it kind of go through different types of projects. So I thought it to show this as well. So the first thing to notice, quite a few columns in our board, and essentially it goes from something that's very, very high level idea. You can hear me fine?
Sorry.
Yep.
There's some green, and can see like can only see the black screen.
Oh, really? Okay, well, let me try to reshare again. I'll,
Yeah,
cool,
I just accept.
cool. Let me share the entire screen to see if that works better. Let me know if you guys can see this. All right, is this working or?
Black screen. For me, earlier I could see the full screen, but right now it's just black screen.
Strange. Still black, right?
Yep, still black.
So do you want to try and share your screen and see
Okay.
see if that works, and then I'll talk through that. Sorry, guys, we did do a kind of technical check before the call, and it was working fine.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen now? Please let me know.
Yep, I can see that.
Okay, cool. So let me go to degree project. Okay.
I think we'll probably have to switch to Zoom for the next one. It seems that
Yeah,
there's
I
always
think
quite a
so.
few issues with Superpeer.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of technical issue.
Yeah. So, all right, got it. So everybody can see that now, and I'll keep my eye on the chat just in case anybody,
Yeah.
reports any issues. So, and again, feel free to ask questions as we go through this. So yeah, this is the real project that we use every day to essentially build Blue. And the process of this has kind of changed over the years, but at a high level, we start from the left side, things that are more abstract in nature. So it's kind of ideas or things things that are not yet concrete. And then as we move to the right side, these are things that are more and more in progress, or even actually complete and live to the world. So yeah, and with this, there's also a few interesting things that we have. So a couple of these actual lists are actually fed in via forms as well. So if you switch in via forms, because this is something that maybe a lot of people sometimes don't use. So you can see when we get either bug requests, bug information, or a request for features, these get sent directly to us on the project. And so we can actually review these. And this is great because it means that we don't necessarily have to receive an email and then retype it back in as well. And what we try and do is to segment the process from getting a feature from an idea all the way to what we call shipped production, which is essentially it's live and available for all users. But there's enough steps at any single feature where it's at in the process and who's got to kind of take the next steps. So maybe it's under review dev. So that means that our senior developer is kind of looking at it and double checking the code and so on, and we're doing testing. Or if it's in beta, I know that okay, this is now available to customers who use the beta platform, and also that I'm able to test it out, and so other people, and so on. And then the development column is essentially where we are looking at things that are in progress. So there's only one place we look at to see what's the current work in progress. So I can see, right now we have sort of 24 items, and you can kind of see what we have there. So we're looking to put Blue into multiple regions to speed up the across the world. We're adding some currencies. We're turning ability to turn features on and off, additional languages, getting the mobile app translated as well, and so on. So you can see that it's pretty clear what is happening, right? And then within an individual to do, we can then have discussions and so on. So if you click on say file folders, that's a good example. What we then tend to do, so this is quite a bit that we're working on, and then on the left hand side we use the checklists to basically take this feature and then cut it down into much smaller items, right? So essentially could almost call them, or these checklist items. And from there, we then, the person who's working on that can then start to actually mark those off as they're done. And that gives us a rough idea of overall the progress, right? So we can see that right now this feature is pretty much close to done, right? Most of the items on most of the lists are already marked off, right? So while we may add more items in the near future, we can see that we're pretty much getting there, right? And this is a good way to understand where a specific item is at. And what's great is that even taking the discipline to actually, create all your work into to-dos, and then breaking that down into sub items, it's very good as a mental exercise to understand actually what the definition of done is for a specific item. Because sometimes, one puts an item that you want to get done, and then you don't really understand what it means to complete that and to finish everything. And I think that's where the checklists and the checklist items come really handy, because it allows you to kind of start to chip away at the detail and understand what it means to actually complete something. And it's also a nice way to, you lower your cognitive load, right? You don't have to keep everything in your head. You can drop it into Blue, and then you can kind of forget about it because it's always there. So you can then click and see all the steps that you need to take. So it makes managing, lots and lots of different tasks much easier. Yeah, I think we can exit that. There's a couple of questions, and yeah, I will answer those two right now. So what are the tools you use alongside for collaboration and productivity? Great question. So we use Telegram, which is a chat tool, which is pretty good. It's available on desktop and available on mobile as well. So we have a group chat with our whole team, just for general discussions and meetings, that kind of stuff. And then we've got obviously just one-to-one chat if we're pinging each other for small things. We also have an integration between Blue and Telegram for ourselves, where every time we have new signups, either new customers or new users that join Blue, then there's a specific group where Telegram will kind of notify us on that. And then apart from that, we use a couple of other productivity tools. We use Google for Business. That's mostly for Gmail and for kind of Google Docs. That sometimes you use to write, or spreadsheets, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of our productivity stack, so to speak. Yeah, what kind of to-dos are in the Better Bunny list? That's a great question. And you might wonder about the name as well. So essentially, we have a while back we decided to kind of think of Blue in terms of roughly 3-month product cycles, and this is the second one that we're doing. And essentially, the Better Bunny is our second product development cycle, and we use alliterative names. So there's always an animal and then another word. So Better Bunny. So the next one might be crazy chicken or something. I don't know, but we'll find something. And so essentially, that is where our kind of short-term backlog goes into. So these are the things we want to be working on pretty soon, but not yet. But they're there, so we can start to think about them. We can review them. We can start to drop comments, and then once we have a pretty good idea of how those are going to be working, then we can actually move those across to the development list. And generally, I think it's quite important to split your backlog, especially if you have a lot of items and you're doing a process between short-term and long-term. Because if you scroll to the left, Sarah, we can see that when we have like upcoming news and then keep going, we end up with some lists that have got hundreds of items. And so it would be quite difficult to manage things that we want to do soon and things that maybe we're not going to do for months on end, right? So you can see we've got 300 items of feedback. We've got 220 things on our backlog, and also bugs. So if that was all in one list, it would be very, very difficult to manage. While by splitting them into different lists, it's actually much easier to say, okay, these are the things that we know we care about in the short term, and these are some of the things that we care about in the long term. And then periodically, we can check through those and then move those across into the short-term backlog if we decide to do so. Some questions. Can you do a native Telegram integration? It would be cool. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's on the cards. This year one of the big plans is to do a Zapier integration. We've got our kind of native API, but obviously you do need to be a developer to use that. And so I think using Zapier will enable people that are not technical to hook up Blue into thousands of other applications. And then Folk, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So do you see a point in using Process SOP management software in conjunction with Blue, like Process Street, etc., where SOPs can be stored and can be checked off? Yeah, I think there is a good use case for that as well. I've seen some organizations actually create their own Blue project as a kind of SOP, and essentially they use the description of the checklist to track the process of their kind of standard operating procedures. And I think what's quite nice with our database view is that if you can switch to database view, Sarah, and this is available in beta, by the way. So if you're not using beta, you're not going to see this yet. Is that this makes it quite nice to have a kind of SOPs, right? If you can imagine, you can have the to do and then various custom fields as well, and then you can kind of filter through to find your SOP or search for it. So you could have all your different SOPs for your company, and then you could search, customer onboarding, and then you would filter through that and just find the exact steps on how you need to do, your customer onboarding. And then with that, you can invite some of your team to collaborate with you on that, and also, rest of the team that maybe shouldn't be editing, you can add them as view only, so then they can search the SOPs without actually making any changes or deleting anything. Cool. So yeah, I think it can be done both ways. You can set up a separate SOP in a doc for that. And then yeah, about do you keep a personal to-do list in Blue, a list that is not associated with projects? Yes, I do that, and I think Sarah, you do this as well, right? You have your own personal project. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, and the reason we do this is really because I think my to-dos still not quite where we want to have it at. In the future, we want my to-dos to have multiple to-dos where you can create to-dos in there that are not in any project, and that you can also create your own board, and eventually that becomes your personal project. However, because we're not there yet, and I still want to use Blue to manage my my personal to-do lists, both work and personal, really. Then I have my own board for that. Yeah, that's a good point also raised by Aka. You can also create a list of templated to-dos projects, and then whenever you need them, and it's got maybe all your checklists already set up, you can then just copy them and select to a project and add them to the project. So if you've got a specific kind of process that you want to add to each project when it gets to a certain time, you can then have a sort of a project that's dedicated as a database of different types of to-dos that you then want to clone into other projects. Cool. So if we can go back to board view here, and then I'll talk through a few other things. So one of the big tricks that a lot of people don't know, but it's super useful, is actually the ability to zoom in and zoom out of Blue. Blue uses as its front-end design, it kind of uses Google Material Design, and so by default it's quite large. But you can see that what Sarah's done here is that she's zoomed out quite a bit, and you get to see a lot more of the board and a lot more of the cards, which can be quite useful. Personally, I tend to use Blue between 70 to 80% zoom, and that gives me enough view without being too small to read and strain my eyes. So yeah, so that's quite a good good trick as well when looking at projects. So it allows you to see more. Now jumping to automations. So there's two automations that I think belong in every project, really. And most likely at some point we may even make these defaults that you can easily turn on. And sorry, I don't see you sharing the screen. I'm not sure if your screen is frozen or not. Can you hear me? All right, I think we just dropped Sarah. Let's see if she's back shortly. Yeah, so let me, Sarah will be joining back shortly. Yeah, we'll definitely, we'll make the switch to Zoom next week. So apologies for this. When copying to-dos to a new project, is there a way to do that and keep tags and custom fields?
Hi,
For a
sorry about the screen technical error earlier.
it's all right, you can share again. So yeah, to answer, you can keep the tags. Yes, there's an option. You can choose what to include. We don't allow you to copy yet across the custom fields. However, if you have custom fields already set up in the project that it's been copied to, then those will automatically be applied. All right, now that we are on automations, so this is the way I think automations are best used. So essentially, anytime you've got to repeat something over and over again, and it doesn't really add any value, you should try and automate it. So two of the most obvious ones are when you're moving things to a list that is done or complete, you should automatically mark things as complete, right? So when you drag and drop to your done list, it will automatically mark it, because otherwise every time you're going to have to drag it to the list, then click on the to-do, go into it, and then mark it as complete. And you know, thousands of times, and it's a waste of time, right? And then the other way also, when you're in a to-do and you mark it as complete, you should also have a to-do set up to move automatically to your done list, or in our case, it's called shipped production. And again, this saves a lot of time and automatically keeps your list quite organized. And then also you'll notice that we've got a couple of other automations, and this is to do with when you create a to-do in a specific list. Often you'll want it to have it right, because it will list and the categorization of tags will often be similar. So in our case, when we create a new to-do in the bugs list, we'll want to automatically tag it as a bug. And then the great thing is that once we move that down our process, that bug will still have that bug tag, and so we can track it through the whole process. We can filter by that tag, and it really keeps things organized. But we don't really have to do much to keep it organized, because we just need to create it to do. And then the same thing for customer feedback. The other quite powerful area for automations is when part of your process requires perhaps you as a manager to review somebody's work. And instead of having them always mention you or tag you or whatever, just set up an automation in your review list to automatically assign the to-do to yourself. And you can also, within that, also add a relative due date. So you can give yourself 3 days or a week to review. And then when you drag that, when one of your team members drags the to-do into the review list, it will automatically assign you and you 3 or 7 days to review that item, and then you'll be notified based on your notification settings. And so that really, again, starts to save a lot of time. And so when you think of a project from the process from A to Z, you may have multiple lists where different people are assigned based on the process, right? So imagine if it's a social media post, it might go to somebody who's going to do the copy, and then it goes to the next step, which is a graphic designer, and it will automatically assign that person and unassign the copywriter. Then that graphic designer does the graphic and uploads it there, puts it to the next step in the process where it gets assigned to a manager who reviews it, who then maybe puts it to the next step that gets assigned to a client for sign off, and then so on, right? So you can really start to create this nice process that just flows work through, and it just makes handling things way easier. So yeah, so that's any questions on this so far with the automations? All right, good. Perfect. Then a couple of other things I wanted to discuss. I've touched on tags a fair bit already, but I did want to specifically call out to them. I think trying to get as many to-dos tagged as possible is really useful. And the reason is because you can actually click on a to-do, so on a tag, sorry. So maybe, Sarah, you can click on one and filter by them. And this enables you to filter your view on your board or any other list by that tag, right? And that's really handy, because often you may not care about every single item, but you may care specifically about one type of one type of category or tag, and then you can do this. So as an example, it's Sarah's essentially filtered out by, and then we just see languages, right? So if I've got a question, okay, where are we at with our language implementation? I can just filter by languages. It will remove everything else, and they give me a very clear idea. Cool, great question by Akra. When to use tags versus lists? So that's great. So basically, lists is to build process, right? So where do you go from having an initial thing that needs to get done to doing all the steps that you need to do to complete it, and then putting it into a completed list? So that's the build process. Tags is to categorize all the things that you have to do in different ways, right? So for instance, if it was, if you had a project for social media, the process to go from post idea to published may be the same for all channels, right? Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, your blog, and so on, right? But you definitely do want to be able to see those different channels. They would be tags. So then if I want to see, okay, all the Facebook posts and where they're at, I can filter by the Facebook tag and then just see my Facebook. So I would imagine tag is categorization, while lists is more about process, right? And I want to then jump into the next point that I wanted to talk here, because it's related. And this is about custom fields. So if you can open a to-do, and then we can create a multi-select custom field. So actually, we have one here as an example. So this is we use this to categorize issues. So wherever it's a web issue, wherever it's Chrome, Edge, Safari, Firefox, or wherever it's iOS and Android. Now the great thing of this kind of select list is that you can actually also filter by this the same way you filter by tags. So if you go to, we launched this relatively recently. I think it was in November or October, and essentially we have these kind of advanced custom filters. So you can say, okay, well, show me all to-dos that are web Chrome issues, right? And again, you can see that we instantly filter that list out. But also conversely, we can do the opposite. We can say, show me everything where the platform is not Chrome, right? And this is a negative filter. So we'll actually remove those that have that that custom field selected as web Chrome. So you can really use your imagination here when you want to create different views and slice your data. And this gets really useful when you use database view as well, because essentially, if you think about it, if you're using a database view, these filters that we give you are quite powerful because you can also stack them up. So you can create one rule and then you can add another rule below it. So essentially, what you're doing is you're creating like if you're familiar with database terminology, it's almost an SQL query, a database query, but we're making it accessible in plain English, right? It's just very easy to use. So if you've got a lot of data on your customers or support IT tickets of different natures, and you've got a lot of custom fields, you can really drill down and get some useful insights, but also just narrow down what you see so you can focus. So this is really, really useful, I find, as well, because in this case you can say, okay, well, show me bugs that are related to this, and maybe even assign to an individual, right? And then I can narrow that down a lot. Yeah, so I hope that's been useful in terms of showing you a little bit how we use Blue. I think for another key thing that I wanted to discuss today was, and I get this question a lot, when I speak to people on a one-to-one basis or something by email, is when to use one project and when to use multiple projects, right? And I tell you, definitely what I would recommend not doing is create projects for each person, because the problem with that is that often work to get something done, it often requires the input of more than one person. And if you split your team up into separate projects where only one person is in each project, you end up creating these silos where other people can't see the other work that's happening, right? A much better way to do that is to bring all of that in one project and then assign people work in the same process within the project. And the great thing here is that then if I'm giving work to somebody, I can see what else is on their plate, right? Because in that project, they might have many other things assigned. That gives me a good idea of, okay, when can this potentially get done, right? And it can be a conversation started to say, okay, well, I see that you've got a lot of to-dos right now. Shall we move a couple of these back and then we add this new one and so on, right? And that kind of conversation couldn't really be had if you're putting your team into separate projects. So yeah, where possible, try and have one project. And a similar thing for related work. So, going back to the example of a social media project, I would say instead of having separate projects for Facebook and for Instagram posting and for LinkedIn and for blogs, I would say use one project, and then you can use tags to categorize the work instead. Where you do want to split projects into two is where there's sometimes privacy concerns. So for instance, you've got things that you don't want all your team members to see, then you may want to split off a project, right? So where you only invite fewer people and only they can see the data. Sergio's asked a good question: is can filters be saved so then it's easier to go back and forth? We don't have the ability to save filters yet, although that's definitely something that we've considered, and I think you'll see that definitely come into the platform. That said, we do save the last view that you have in the project. So for instance, if you switch to database view and then you go and use Blue in another project or turn your computer off, when you go back, we'll remember your last view is database view, and we also remember any filters you have, like assignees, due dates, tags, and so on. So we do save the last filter view that you have, but we don't have like a way to save different types of filters and then quickly switch between them. But I think that's going to be definitely something that you'll see coming on our platform, because we know it's crazy useful, right? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and then I think final point before we can open the floor up to some more questions as well is, one of the key advantages of Blue is that when you start using it for all your different processes, you essentially have everything you need on your sidebar, right? Wherever your list of customers or list of employees and how much they're paid and all the details, your company information, your list of legal documents. It could be the sales CRM, the recruitment lists, and then any individual projects. You could have another project for customer support where people are filling in forms and it's getting piped directly in there. And so it starts to make it very, very easy to manage, a small medium business, because often, the thing with running a small business is that people get quite busy, right? Because you don't, it's not like having a big company where you've got a huge amount of support and help. You're doing a lot of things yourself, and so having everything in one place where you can quickly switch, drop a comment, and then go back later and see what's happening and how things are moving forwards is really, really advantageous. Yeah. Sarah, are you still with us, or did the screen drop?
Wait, I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so and I think that really comes and gives Blue a lot of extra value. So any process in your company that needs to be tracked, create a project for it and track it. And I think it really starts to make things much easier to handle. And in my own personal work, I'm quite a busy guy. I've got Blue, and I've got Mad, which has a couple of dozen projects across clients. Some of them quite large ones in the 5-6 figures, and there's thousands of items to keep track of, right? And I wouldn't possibly be able to remember them purely by having my own personal to-do list, on my laptop or on my phone, or just trying to remember things. It would be impossible. But splitting things up into different projects and into different processes, it allows me to really scale my brain almost, right? Because I don't need to keep this all in my working memory, right? But when I jump into a project, I can see where things are at. So yeah, I think that's really, really a powerful use for Blue. Great. So I think hopefully that gives you a good idea on how we use Blue to build Blue, and a little bit of our philosophy of setting up projects, and really to just recap on first principles. So lists are used for process, and you've got to think of these step-by-step requirements for your projects and how to map that to the list. Tags are used for high-level categorization of the to-dos within that to make it easy to filter. Then using custom fields such as single select or multi-select can give you more advanced filtering options as well. And then we also highly encourage to use automations, where it's automatically marking things as complete once they're done, or assigning people automatically, or tagging things when things are created in a specific list. And that's going to go a long way to keeping your project in a healthy state and keeping you productive. So yeah, so I hope that kind of high level advice has been useful. Happy to take any more specific questions, either on anything that you've heard today or anything else on Blue, and also if you have either feature requests or questions on on any other aspects of Blue, I'm more than happy to answer those. Great. So Akas asked, how do you set up notifications? All right, great. So we do have some documentation on this, and I believe also a YouTube video. But yeah, happy to just quickly go through that now. And I guess maybe that's more of a question of how I personally do that as well, more than how it's done in Blue. But yeah, sorry, if you can share your screen.
Oh, is my screen weren't shared the whole time?
Right now, no, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, let me reshare it again.
Cool.
Please let me know if you see my screen.
Yeah, got it. So yeah, if you can jump
Okay.
into Blue and then go to notification settings.
So
yeah, so this is the the interface for notifications. So essentially, what I do have notifications on, but I rarely just turn them fully off. What I do have for email notifications, generally it's just when I'm added into a project, because that's something that's a quite easy thing to miss, especially if I've got dozens and dozens of projects I'm in, and also if I'm mentioned in a comment, because I like to receive that by email, because normally it's more time sensitive, and as well reminders of overdue to-dos. That's also something that I'm assigned. I like to receive kind of notification for that. And then for everything else, I've pretty much got mobile and desktop turned on for everything. So very much how Sarah has got this set up here as well. And then for projects that I want to follow, so I normally, the main projects when we're talking about Blue, I follow everything. Well, for MAD, where I've got, it's more of a professional service agency, the clients that I manage personally, I have my notifications obviously turned on for those projects because I want to know. While the projects that are managed by other people and I'm in, just more of an oversight role, I turn notifications off so I can focus more. But then I can still always jump into that project and see what's happening. So yeah, hopefully that that answers that in terms of how I personally set them up. So really, I try and reduce the number of emails that I get. Yeah. So M. Killingsworth said, how do you recommend to uniquely identify projects to create an overview list of future active and completed projects? All right. I mean, for completed projects, I don't think you need to sort of have a naming structure because you can archive them. So we can show you how to do that. Essentially, if you archive a project, that will freeze it, so nothing can happen to it. There's no comments or anything like that. And then and that will go to the archived projects list, which is in the sidebar as well. Essentially, that's where your completed projects can live. So they're out of the way, they're not bothering you day to day as you're working. But if you need to jump in and see what happened and quickly get some data or some information, it's super easy to do so. And we put an archive tag at the top as well, next to the project setting called, just to let you know that it's archived. Exactly. So that would be for completed projects. For future projects, generally, at least in my experience, I don't tend to I tend to create a project in Blue when I'm starting a project. If I haven't yet started one, then not. Then I won't normally add that in. If I'm planning a project, then normally that's already part of creating a project, right? So if we were planning to launch a new website for Blue, then I would already say, okay, well, let's set up the Blue, new website project, and then we will start planning in there already. So that's how I would kind of do that. Yeah, we also do have obviously the ability to rename projects, so you can use some kind of identifier there. And also, each project can have its own image as well. So you could potentially use, use some kind of color coding in your imagery as well to sort your projects that way. And finally, we also have project folders on the sidebar. So you could potentially have, future projects and move them all into a folder in the sidebar, and then have active projects as well. Do note that you can also color code these as well. Do note that these folders are only for yourself. They don't show up for other people. We will in the future do a nice clever way of being able to have company-wide folder kind of architecture, but also retain your own folder view as well. So that would be a recommendation on that. Aka's asked the question of how often it's recommended to review to-dos. That's a good question. So for MAD, which is our kind of professional service arm, so we tend to do daily reviews of projects. So the management team meets every day for about an hour, and we go through each project and we see where we're at. If there's any issues where things are clogged up or are stuck, and then we look at how to resolve them. However, that's a fairly high pressure environment, right? We're a professional service firm. We deal with big customers, some global customers as well, and so we really on top of it. I think if you're more on on kind of freelancing or smaller projects, I think maybe a couple of times a week, going into your project, making sure that things are up to date. You've got the right due dates in there and things that are in place are in the right list and things are under review is plenty, right? So, but I think what I would shy away from is doing it, once every week or once every 2 weeks, because then you never really have a fresh view of what the project status is at. Cool. Yeah, we still have 7 minutes. So if anybody's got any questions on any specifics, even on questions about our roadmap or what we're building next, I'm more than happy to answer, because we're pretty transparent as a company on what we're working on. We often publish like our work in progress videos and stuff. So happy to also answer that as well.
So maybe jumping back into one of the questions that asked about the future project, we also have template where you can plan the project and then you can always reuse the template for later.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, if you've got similar projects that you're starting, starting often, like new client onboarding, that kind of stuff, yeah, for sure, create a template, and then you can just create it from there, and you'll have everything you need. Okay, yeah. So, and I think it's Mike Killingsworth, right? If I remember correctly. Anyway, hope it is Mike. So yeah, so please give an overview of the roadmap. Yeah, sure thing. So the big goals that we've kind of set ourselves this year, and really the big one is Gantt charts. So we're currently working on this. So we've got we're selecting the kind of software that we're going to be integrating and implementing in Blue. So we're testing a few different solutions, and then my hope is that by early Q2 we have something that we're testing and running with, because I think that's really the missing piece of the puzzle for project management, and that we don't have is Gantt charts, because being able to have a visual overview of your project and how everything kind of cascades together is really, really useful. And I know especially for professional service firms, clients ask for this all the time. And so being able to just jump into Blue, switch the view, and show them the visual project plan like that, I think would be really amazing. In addition, files is getting quite an overhaul. So I think we showed a little bit the to-do in our Blue HQ project about that. So we've got a pretty good prototype right now of file folders. Essentially, you can create nested folders within the file structure. And then the next thing after that will be that you can share individual you can share the individual file and also the folder as well to people. So you can start to use that a lot more like Google Drive. And then some of the other things will be, I think I've mentioned, is the Zapier integration. So this is definitely something that we want to do, because it's really important for people to be able to integrate Blue into other tools, and that's a super easy way to do that. And then a few other quite important things. One is project trash. So right now, when you delete a to-do or you delete a list in Blue, this stuff is like gone, like really, really gone. So it's completely deleted from our database. And there's been, while we do have a kind of warning pop-ups before you delete stuff, there's been cases of deleted data and lost it when they didn't mean to, right? The reason we do that is because we want to give people a sense of privacy. So when something is deleted, then it's really gone. That said, there's considerations about usability as well. So what we'll be building is a kind of project trash. So basically, people can delete stuff, but instead of being fully deleted, it goes into the trash. And this is where the administrator can then review things and then decide to completely delete the trash. For privacy reasons, they want to really remove everything, or the data will continue to live in the trash, and then maybe it might get deleted within a certain time frame, like 90 days, or 180 days, depending, and so on. Cool. So I hope that kind of answers that. And then the final thing actually to mention on the roadmap is a much, much improved version of My To-Dos and also of other people's personal profile pages. Because one of the key requirements we know is that people want to click on somebody's profile and then see everything that they're working on, right? Not just the activity history of that person, but how many to-dos they have assigned, when the due dates are for those, and so on. So it really gives you an idea of how much is on that person's plate, right? Cool. Aka asked a question about, I invited a person to Blue and the invitation email text is in English, which not everybody understands, and they still need some hand-holding. Yeah, that's a great point. And that is actually something that's missing from our translation. I think in the near future, when we do we can add, we can translate the invitation email text, and then that give you a selection to say send email invite in, and then you can choose the language as well. And it would probably default to whichever language you've got selected at that time. Sarah, maybe you can make a log of that on Blue HQ, because I'm not sure if we've actually had this idea or not before. So yeah, thanks for that great feedback. I will definitely look to implement that. And then Sergio has asked, any thoughts on email integration on Blue? So client emails could come in and be made into tasks, with subsequent emails going into comments. Yeah, actually, we definitely have thought about this. We are upgrading our email, the way we handle emails at the moment. So right now, we used to kind of manage our own email sending. Now we're using a third-party vendor. So right now, that's mostly for the kind of welcome emails. And then the next step is to move all the transactional emails across for that. So for instance, things like notifications and so on. And what we're coming out with shortly is that when you get an email notification, you'll actually be able to see the content of the notification within the email. So for instance, if somebody has mentioned you, you'll see the actual comment within the email. So we're definitely doing upgrades there. And then yes, the ability to have a special email per list that people can email to create items, and then you can then have a conversation back and forth from Blue to that person's email. That's definitely something that we will have in the future, because I know it basically turns Blue into a really easy to use support desk that probably rivals a lot of other support desks, and it makes it much easier. In fact, we would also like to use Blue to handle our support tickets, but right now we can't, because we don't have this. So we use Scout, right, which is a paid tool. Great. Yeah, Francois asked about Pabli. Yeah, so I think that's also something I've considered, because we've got a lot of users from Appsumo, and I know that Pabli was also a big deal on Appsumo, and a lot of you guys have that as well. We will be prioritizing Zapier initially, just purely because of the large user base that they have. And I know it's paid as well as a paid service. There's a free tier, but then it's paid. But I think in terms of, we're a small team that we have to prioritize the potential integration. This gives us the largest amount of integrations with this effort. But I think Pabli and a few other integrators will then follow suit as well. And yeah, the native integration with Telegram as well, to get notifications as well. I think we have an internal version of this, and I think eventually that will roll out to the general public as well. Great, yeah. So yeah, we've kind of we've hit the 1 hour mark. So I guess any final questions, and then we can wrap this up. And I hope it's been useful for everybody, and also anyone who's watching the recording can also get a good idea of how we use Blue to build Blue. Yeah, 8 and 8 I'm not familiar with. I think let me check that out. But yeah, nothing comes up on that domain. But
thank you so much, everyone, for joining in this webinar.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And then we'll see you next week. Sarah, did we decide the topic? already for next week?
Yeah, we want to do something about math related with
Right.
agencies. Yep.
Yep. So I think next week is going to be really digging deep more on the agency use case. So if you're working with clients in any kind of professional service, wherever it's a marketing company or design or anything like that, then that webinar will be for you, because it will really help to show how the best practices around that to working with clients. All right, great. Thanks for your time, everybody, and
Yep.
have a productive week.
Yeah, and also if you wanna rewatch this video, it will be on our YouTube channel. I'll upload it, so you can always check that. It's just Blue Teamwork on YouTube.
Cool.
And
And okay. Yeah, we'll check that out, Sergio. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.